I sat there, my heart pounding, as my father's voice echoed across the grand dining hall. "You're no longer part of this family." My mother's cold words followed, cutting deeper. "We don't reward failure." My siblings smirked, like they'd been waiting for this. I felt the heat of shame rising in my chest until my phone buzzed. It was David. "Jane, you need to answer this now. SoftBank just called. 40 million. It's real." I wiped my tears, slowly lifted my head, and met my father's eyes. I pressed answer. "Hello?" I whispered, a small smile forming. Let's see who's really a failure. I was always the one they forgot, the invisible middle child. When I was little, my father's hand would rest proudly on Andrew's shoulder. "You're going to take the Mitchell name even higher, son." He'd look at Rebecca with admiration. The perfect daughter, beauty, brains, everything. And me? I was the quiet one in the corner, the girl with tangled hair and scraped knees, huddled over a dusty old laptop Aunt Patricia gave me. It was the only person who ever really saw me. Aunt Patricia. When my parents threw out my silly computer junk, she'd sneak me parts, whispering, "You build what they can't see yet." But to my parents, I was a waste of space. "Jane, no one respects people who play with computers," my mother would say with a sharp laugh. "You'll end up fixing printers in some basement," Andrew smirked. Even Rebecca's gentle smile felt like a quiet pity. But they didn't know. I wasn't just playing. In secret, I built something. Something real. While my siblings posed for family magazines, I worked double shifts at the clinic, pocketing every spare dollar to fund my idea, Secure Health, a healthcare tech platform to fix the broken system I saw every day. People waiting weeks for specialist consultations, patients falling through the cracks. I knew I could change it, but investors didn't care. "You're too young. You're a woman in tech. It's not a good bet. You don't have the right background, not Ivy League. We can't take you seriously." I heard it over and over. I still showed up. I still pitched. Every time I signed a tiny deal or landed a small clinic, I'd walk into the next family dinner quietly proud, until Andrew would say, "Still playing business, huh?" Rebecca would add, "At least you're having fun with your hobby." I stopped trying to explain. I just worked harder. I coded until my hands cramped. I slept on the office couch. I poured everything into Secure Health, even when it almost broke me. And then, one morning, after another investor slammed the door in my face, I opened my inbox to find it. A meeting request from Evergreen Partners. They weren't just some startup fund, they were big. They'd heard about Secure Health's new predictive scheduling algorithm. They wanted to meet me. Tomorrow, 8 a.m. sharp. I stared at the screen, my heart racing. This could be it, the break I'd bled for. But my phone buzzed. A text from my mother. "Don't forget Rebecca's award ceremony tomorrow morning. You will be there. Family comes first." Family. I laughed bitterly. Where was family when I needed them? Where was family when I was working night shifts just to keep Secure Health alive? I wanted to ignore it, but I knew what would happen. My father would make it a public affair. Another chance to show the world his perfect children. Another chance to humiliate me for not measuring up. I paced the room, biting my nails. Evergreen didn't reschedule. If I missed this chance, it might not come again. I called David, my CTO and the closest thing I had to family. "I need you to go to the meeting," I said quickly. "I'll prep you tonight." But David hesitated. "Jane, they specifically asked for you. They know who you are. They want you." My chest tightened. I had spent years building this company, years fighting for someone to see me. And now, when the door was finally open, I was expected to sit in the front row, clapping for Rebecca like I didn't matter. I heard my mother's voice echoing in my head. Family comes first, but maybe this time, I had to come first. I grabbed my laptop and started typing. I'd go to the meeting, but I wasn't just going to walk through that door. I was going to blow it open. and for the first time, I didn't care if they noticed or not. I knew what I was doing when I turned off my phone and walked straight past the family's black car, waiting to take me to Rebecca's award ceremony. I knew the price. But for once, I was choosing me. The lobby of Evergreen Partners was cold and silent. As I stepped into the glass elevator, my palms were sweating so badly I had to wipe them on my skirt. I kept hearing my mother's voice in my head over and over. Family comes first. But that morning, I wasn't their daughter. I was the founder of Secure Health. The conference room was intimidating. 4 stern-looking men in sharp suits, laptops open, blank stares. I stood tall, even though my legs felt weak. "This is not just another scheduling app," I began, forcing the shake out of my voice. "Secure Health is the first platform that uses predictive algorithms to match patients with the right specialists. Fast. No more waiting weeks. We cut it to hours." One of the men raised his eyebrow. "And why should we believe you can pull this off? You're young, you're small, and frankly, this is a male-dominated space. Do you have the capacity to scale this?" His words hit me hard, but I didn't flinch. I'd heard it all before. "Because I've lived this problem," I said firmly. "I've worked in clinics where we had to tell sick people they'd have to wait 6 weeks to see a specialist. I've watched families suffer because we couldn't move fast enough. I know exactly what's broken, and I've already started fixing it." I clicked through the demo, showing them live cases where Secure Health had connected patients to specialists in under 24 hours. They didn't look impressed. One of them even checked his watch. Finally, the lead investor leaned back. "We'll think about it." That was all. No handshake, no promise. Just, "We'll think about it." I walked out trying to hold myself together. I had risked everything for this meeting, and it still wasn't enough. When I got home, my mother was waiting in the front hallway. Her face was tight with fury. Without warning, she slapped me. Not hard enough to leave a bruise, but hard enough to send a message. "You missed your sister's big day. For what? For one of your silly games?" Her voice dripped with disgust. "You'll never be like us, Jane. Never." I opened my mouth, but there was nothing left to say. Later that night, my father sent a short, cold message. "Your accounts are frozen. Your car lease is canceled. If you insist on making yourself a stranger to this family, then you can finance your failures yourself." I sat on the floor of my tiny apartment, staring at the wall as the weight of it crashed down on me. I had some savings, but not enough. I was already in debt from keeping Secure Health alive. My credit cards were maxed out, my rent was overdue. I called David. "I think this is it," I whispered. "I think I can't do this anymore." His voice cracked on the other end. "Jane, don't say that. Don't you dare." But I meant it. I had no investors, no family, no more money. I was finally ready to quit. And then my phone buzzed. A notification from the Secure Health app, followed by another and another. My inbox exploded. New user registrations. Hundreds. Thousands. I blinked in confusion and clicked open TikTok. There, pinned to the top of the trending page, was a video from a young doctor I'd never met. In the video, she smiled into the camera and said, "Hey, this app called Secure Health just helped me book a cardiologist for my patient in less than 2 hours. It's a total game changer. This is how we should be doing healthcare now. Download it." The video had gone viral. Hundreds of thousands of views. Tens of thousands of shares. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the comments. People loved it. People needed it. The app I'd built in the shadows, mocked, rejected, disowned, was suddenly the center of a movement. And in that moment, sitting in the dark of my tiny apartment, I realized something. I wasn't invisible anymore. The days that followed felt like living in a dream I wasn't sure I deserved. Secure Health's user base exploded overnight. Patient downloads doubled, then tripled. Emails flooded in from doctors, clinics, and even small hospitals asking for partnerships. The same investors who had once laughed at me now chased me like I was the last golden ticket. I should have been overwhelmed. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't scared. I was ready. David and I lived in the office, working 18-hour days. We patched bugs, onboarded doctors, answered calls at 2 a.m. We were exhausted, but we couldn't stop. The wave was here, and I had to ride it. Through all of this, Aunt Patricia quietly became my lifeline. Every week, she'd send me homemade meals in Tupperware and handwritten notes. "You are the one rewriting this family story. Keep going, sweetheart." I taped those notes to my desk, each one a small shield against the cold silence from the rest of my family. Because if they hated me before, now they despised me. They didn't like that people started to notice me. That secure health was being whispered about at conferences. That journalists were calling me a visionary in digital health, but they especially hated that I didn't need them anymore. It all boiled over at the family's annual Christmas party. I hadn't planned to go, but Aunt Patricia had begged me just to show my face. I walked in wearing a simple navy blue dress, no designer labels, no showy jewelry, just me. And yet, somehow, I felt taller than I ever had. Andrew found me near the dessert table, a glass of expensive wine in hand, his signature smug grin in place. "Still playing with your toy company, Jane?" he said, loud enough for the circle of relatives to hear. "You know, some of us moved on to real businesses." Laughter rippled around him, the same old script. But this time I didn't shrink. I didn't explain. I didn't defend. I just smiled softly and said, "You're right, I am playing. But I'm playing at a level you can't even see yet." I walked away, each step feeling lighter, like I'd dropped 100 pounds of invisible weight. And in that moment, I promised myself I would never beg for their approval again. They could keep their parties, their false smiles, their family name. I was building something real, and that was enough. The next morning, I was back at the office, buried in paperwork and partnership requests, when my assistant Emily came sprinting in, nearly tripping over herself. Her eyes were wide with panic and excitement. "Jane, SoftBank, they just called. They want to meet you tomorrow. Urgent meeting. They wouldn't tell me why, but they said it's big, really big." I stared at her, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. SoftBank wasn't just another investor. They were a giant. A call from them could change everything. I closed my laptop slowly, feeling the weight of the moment settle on my shoulders. This was the kind of meeting people spent their whole lives chasing, and somehow it was me they wanted. I picked up my phone to call David. "We need to prep," I said, a fire building in my chest. "We're not going to this meeting hoping they'll like us. We're going in knowing they need us." For years, I had been chasing doors that were always slammed shut. Now, those doors were flying open, and I wasn't just walking through. I was ready to own the room. The night before the biggest meeting of my life, my phone buzzed with a message that twisted my stomach into a knot. "Mother, family dinner tomorrow at 6 p.m. Don't disappoint us again. No, hello. No, how are you? Just another order." I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. SoftBank's pitch was scheduled for 4 p.m. Dinner at 6 p.m. In theory, I could rush from the meeting to the restaurant, but I knew how this worked. SoftBank didn't do quick meetings. They pushed, they poked, they tore you apart to see if you would break. I could either chase my future or keep chasing their approval, but not both. I locked my phone and slid it across the table. No reply. That night, I barely slept. David and I rehearsed the pitch over and over until the words stopped feeling like English. We reviewed user data, revenue projections, customer testimonials, app growth curves. "Jane, you've got this," David said, his voice steady even though I could see the worry behind his glasses. "They'll see what you've built." "I hope so," I whispered. But hope wasn't enough. The next afternoon, we stepped into SoftBank's towering glass building. The walls gleamed. The silence pressed in around me. We rode the elevator to the 40th floor, and when the doors opened, I felt like I'd walked straight into the lion's den. 6 investors, poker faces, 0 small talk. I introduced myself, and within seconds the questions started. Fast, sharp, relentless. How is your infrastructure prepared for sudden scaling? Who's your competition, and how fast can they copy you? Why haven't you already partnered with larger hospitals? Your burn rate is aggressive. How long before you need another round of funding? Each question felt like a jab. They weren't trying to understand me. They were trying to break me. But I held my ground. I answered every question, showed them our growth, showed them the stories of patients who had found life-saving specialists in hours instead of weeks, explained how we built the back end to scale quickly, how we had beta tests lined up with major clinics. Still, they weren't impressed. One man leaned forward, eyes sharp. "You've built something impressive, but we're not here for impressive. We're here for massive. You say this can scale, but can you prove it? We don't just want you to grow. We want you to explode." Silence. Then he added, almost casually, "We like you. We're in for 40 million, but only if you can triple your user base in 3 months." Triple. In 3 months. I felt my throat tighten. That was a mountain. Most startups would need a year or more to hit those numbers. The pressure could crush me. Failure wasn't an option. I could hear my mother's voice in my head again. "Don't disappoint us again." But for the first time, I realized her approval didn't hold the same weight anymore. This was my moment. Mine. I straightened my shoulders and looked the lead investor in the eye. "Deal." David exhaled next to me, his grip tightening on his laptop bag. "Good," the investor said. "We'll have our lawyers send over the paperwork. Just remember, if you don't hit the target, we pull the funding immediately." I nodded. "I understand." I understood perfectly. I wasn't just betting the company, I was betting everything I had left. The meeting ended. David and I walked out in silence until we reached the sidewalk. Then he let out a shaky laugh. "Did we just sell our souls?" I smiled faintly. "No, we just bought our future." I pulled out my phone. There were more texts from my mother. "Mother, Jane, where are you?" "Mother, you're embarrassing us again." "Mother, don't bother coming if you can't respect this family." I turned off my phone and slipped it into my bag. Some things didn't need a reply. The night before, I made a choice. I chose the SoftBank pitch over my family's dinner, and now here I was, right back where it all began. Back to the opening scene. The grand restaurant, the white tablecloths, the polished wine glasses, the waiters in black suits who knew our family by name. The place where my father loudly declared, "You're no longer part of the Mitchell family. You've been officially cut off." My mother, calm as ever, had driven the knife in deeper. "We don't reward failure, Jane. You're not one of us anymore." I had sat there frozen, the burn of humiliation searing my skin while my siblings smirked, enjoying the moment like they'd waited years for it. And then, my phone rang. I remember all their eyes snapping toward me in disgust as if I couldn't even follow basic table manners. I answered the call. "David?" I could barely get the word out. His voice was breathless, filled with disbelief. "Jane, it's done. It's sealed. 40 million. SoftBank is in. The deal is real." The entire table went still. Silence slammed down like a wall. I lowered my phone slowly, my heart thudding. I looked directly at my father. His face, usually flushed with pride and control, was ghost white. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped his glass tighter. Andrew, who had spent years mocking me, lost his grip entirely. His wine glass slipped and shattered, the red splash spreading across the table like a slow explosion. Rebecca's fork slipped from her hand and clanged onto her plate as she stuttered, wait, did he just say 40 million? I nodded, the tiniest, slowest smile curling at the edge of my lips. Yes, $40 million. From SoftBank? For Secure Health? The same company you all said was a joke. The weight in the air was suffocating. Family friends, distant cousins, old business partners. Everyone nearby was staring now, pretending they weren't, but their frozen faces gave them away. My father finally found his voice. His words stumbled, desperate now. Well, of course, we've always believed in you. We just wanted to push you to be your best, Jane. You understand, right? That's all this was. Exactly. My mother rushed in, her voice suddenly soft, almost sweet. Families fight, but we stick together in the end. You've always been one of us. I shook my head slowly, looking at them with calm I didn't know I had. Thank you, I said, my voice steady. Thank you for cutting me off. I needed that. Without it, I wouldn't have built something that's fully mine. They didn't know what to say. They could feel the shift, how their power over me was slipping through their fingers. I stood up gently, my chair scraping softly against the marble floor. You don't get to celebrate this win, I said quietly. You weren't part of the climb, so you don't get to stand at the top with me. My father's face hardened, but I turned before he could respond. I walked out of that restaurant into the cold Boston air. Every step felt lighter than the last. It was like I had finally walked out of a prison I hadn't even realized I'd locked myself inside. Halfway down the sidewalk, I heard someone call out, "Jane!" I turned, bracing myself. But it wasn't my father. It wasn't my mother. It was Aunt Patricia hurrying toward me, her breath puffing little clouds in the winter air. In her hands was a small white envelope. You really did it, she said, her eyes sparkling with quiet pride. I always knew you would. I smiled, something warm blooming in my chest. You were the only one who did. She shook her head. No. You believed when no one else would. That's what made the difference. She handed me the envelope. I wasn't going to show you this tonight, but maybe it's time. I think you'll want to see it. It's about your grandfather. The side of the family no one ever told you about. I frowned, curiosity tugging at me. My grandfather? Aunt Patricia smiled softly like she was letting me in on a secret the world had forgotten. Your story's just beginning, Jane. And with that, she pressed the envelope into my hand and walked away, leaving me standing under the streetlight, my fingers trembling around whatever truth she had just handed me. When I opened the envelope Aunt Patricia handed me that night, I had no idea it would change everything. Inside was a letter, handwritten, simple. But the weight of what it said nearly knocked the breath out of me. Aunt Patricia had been quietly building something all along. She owned shares in a powerful tech investment firm, one that had backed some of the biggest startups in Boston. I blinked, reading the words over and over. It almost didn't feel real. She'd been waiting for the right moment to tell me, and now she wanted to help me grow Secure Health. The next morning, we sat together over steaming mugs of tea. Her voice was calm, steady, like she'd been rehearsing this conversation for years. I always knew you'd need a door, she told me, so I spent years building one, just in case your family ever locked theirs. My throat tightened. Why didn't you tell me before? I asked, my voice cracking just a little. Her eyes softened. Because you needed to believe you were climbing on your own. If I'd told you, you might have leaned on me too early. But you did it, Jane. You got there by yourself. Now let me help you go even further. And she did. With Aunt Patricia's connections and silent backing, Secure Health took off like wildfire. But this time, I wasn't just chasing growth. I was building something bigger. Something that mattered. I hired people no one else would even give a chance. Single mothers who needed flexible schedules. I created roles that worked for them. Young girls who loved computers but had been told they weren't the type for tech. I set up coding clubs and paid internships just for them. Minorities who had been locked out of leadership. I didn't just hire them. I trusted them to lead. Secure Health became more than a company. It became a home, a family, the kind I'd always wished I had. Hospitals signed contracts faster than we could process. Patient downloads soared. My team tripled in size. Media outlets started calling me a pioneer in inclusive tech. Investors who'd once brushed me off were now desperate to get a foot in the door. Then came the IPO. The morning of the launch, I sat at my desk, watching the numbers flicker on the screen. Secure Health opened at a $220 million valuation. I let out a long, shaky breath. I'd done it. David called from the trading floor. I could barely hear him over the cheering behind him. "You did it, Jane," he said. His voice cracked. "We did it." I let the tears fall this time. Quiet ones. Not for the money, not for the title, but because I'd finally proven to myself that I never needed their approval to begin with. And just like clockwork, the calls started coming in. Andrew texted me. "Hey, Jane, maybe we can catch up. Would love to hear more about Secure Health." Rebecca sent an email. "So proud of you, sis. Let's grab lunch soon. Family's family, right?" I stared at their messages for a long time. Then I did what they never expected. I said nothing. I didn't respond. Because I wasn't the invisible sister anymore. And I didn't owe them anything. And yet, life has a funny way of circling back. One morning, a thick cream-colored envelope landed on my desk. It was from the Boston Heritage Gala, the annual event my family practically owned. It was the same event they'd never once invited me to. But this time, my name was printed in gold. Jane Mitchell, Tech Leader of the Year. I stared at it. My fingers trembled a little as I ran them over the lettering. Aunt Patricia walked in and set a cup of tea beside me. "Let me guess," she said, smirking. "They finally want you back?" I smiled. Not out of revenge, not out of anger, but because, for the first time, I didn't feel like the girl desperate for their approval. "They can want whatever they like," I said quietly, "but I'm not going for them." Her brow lifted. "Then why would you go?" I looked down at the envelope again. Because maybe this time I'm going for me. And somewhere deep inside I knew. I wasn't chasing a seat at their table anymore, I was building my own. I stepped out of the car and onto the shining marble steps of the Boston Heritage Gala. The same one I'd been quietly excluded from for most of my life. But tonight, everything was different. The flashes from the cameras blinded me for a moment as reporters swarmed around me. "Jane Mitchell, over here. How does it feel to be the Tech Leader of the Year?" "What's your next big move after the IPO? Do you have a message for young women in tech?" I smiled, steady and calm. I'd spent years preparing for moments like this, but now that I was here, I didn't need to fight for space. I already owned mine. I walked slowly through the grand entrance hall, the tall chandeliers sparkling like I belonged here all along. That's when I saw them. My parents stood by the door looking smaller than I'd ever seen them. My mother clutched her pearl necklace, eyes flicking from me to the cameras, unsure whether to step forward or stay frozen. My father shifted his weight awkwardly, like he couldn't decide if he was proud or ashamed. They didn't know if I would acknowledge them. I didn't. I kept walking. This wasn't their moment to share. Inside the grand ballroom, the MC's voice echoed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are honored to present our Tech Leader of the Year, Jane Mitchell, founder and CEO of Secure Health." Thunderous applause filled the room as I made my way to the stage. For the first time, I wasn't the forgotten middle child. I wasn't the one they brushed aside at family dinners. I wasn't the girl begging to be seen. I was here because I built this life, piece by piece, on my own terms. I took the microphone and looked around the room, not at my parents, not at Andrew or Rebecca, but at the people who truly mattered. My Secure Health team sat together near the front, beaming with pride. David gave me a quiet thumbs up. And Aunt Patricia? She sat with the biggest smile on her face, like she'd known all along I'd stand on this stage one day. I cleared my throat and began. "Thank you. Thank you for this incredible honor. But more than anything, I want to thank the people who walked with me when the road was dark. My chosen family, my team, my mentor, my friend, who never stopped believing, even when the world told us to quit." I paused, letting the weight of those words hang in the air. I've spent most of my life trying to fit into someone else's idea of success. Tonight, I realize, legacy isn't something you inherit. It's something you build. I could feel my parents' eyes on me from across the room, but I didn't look their way. Instead, I looked at the young women in the audience, the ones clutching their notepads, the ones who had probably been told no more times than they could count. I'm proud to announce the Mitchell Foundation for Women in Tech, fully funded by my IPO. We're going to break barriers, fund dreams, and open doors for the next generation of innovators, especially the ones no one else believes in. The applause roared again, but this time it wasn't for the Mitchell name. It was for me, for what I stood for what I had built. I smiled, feeling something I hadn't known in years. Peace. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. Not to them, not to the world, and not to the little girl I used to be, coding on an old laptop in a dark bedroom, wondering if anyone would ever see her. I stepped away from the microphone as the MC returned to the stage. Aunt Patricia met me at the bottom of the steps, wrapping me in a warm hug. "You did it," she whispered. "No," I whispered back. "We did it." Together, we walked past my parents, past Andrew and Rebecca, past the life I once thought I wanted. I didn't turn back. Some doors don't need to be reopened. Some families are the ones you build yourself. And as I walked out of the ballroom, surrounded by the people who had become my true family, I finally understood. This was my legacy, and it had only just begun. If you love stories where the black sheep rises and family revenge takes center stage, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell for more jaw-dropping family dramas. Because sometimes, the best revenge is building your own empire.